What if I told you that the biggest lie in gardening is the seed packet itself? Every single spring, millions of people spend hundreds of dollars buying seeds, buying seedlings, replanting everything from zero, because they believe that's simply how gardening works. But there is a quiet group of gardeners who skipped that treadmill entirely. They planted a container once, years ago, and every spring, food simply comes back on its own. No seeds, no replanting, no spring shopping list. Their balcony wakes up by itself. These are perennial vegetables, crops with a biological engine that stores energy underground all winter and relaunches every spring, stronger than the year before. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. Many of them actually perform better in a container on a balcony than in the ground. Today, we're counting down the 15 perennial container vegetables you plant once and harvest for years.
And make sure you stick around for number 1. It's a vegetable that breaks every rule you think you know, and it will absolutely surprise you. Let's get started. Kicking off our countdown at number 15 is the perfect gateway into the world of perennials, a plant so reliable that it routinely outlives the pot it was planted in. Chives. Most people buy fresh herbs at the store week after week, paying $3 for a plastic clamshell of onion greens that wilt in 2 days. Meanwhile, a single chive plant in a container produces that same harvest continuously, from the first days of spring until hard frost, for a decade or more. The secret is underground. Chives grow from a dense, self-multiplying cluster of tiny bulbs. Every year, each bulb quietly divides into more bulbs, so the clump physically expands on its own. When winter comes, the greens die back, but the bulbs simply go dormant, completely unbothered by frozen soil, and reignite the moment temperatures rise. An 8-inch pot on a balcony rail is genuinely all it takes. Cut the greens with scissors an inch above the soil, and they regrow within 2 weeks, again and again. Every 3 years, tip the clump out, split it in half, and you've doubled your plants for free. Extension herb guides consistently rank chives among the most cold-hardy perennial edibles in existence, surviving winters far below zero with no protection at all. Fun fact, chives are so ancient that Marco Polo is credited with bringing knowledge of them back from China, where they had already been cultivated for over 2,000 years. Coming in at number 14 is a leafy green that beats every spinach and lettuce to your table, often by a full month. Sorrel. Here's the frustration with salad greens. Every year you sow them, wait for germination, baby the seedlings, and by the time they're ready, half the season is gone. Sorrel makes that entire process obsolete.
This hardy perennial holds a thick, energy-packed root crown that survives brutal winters in a container. The moment the ice melts, often in early March when your balcony is still empty and gray, sorrel explodes with bright lemon-flavored leaves. It is routinely the very first fresh harvest of the entire year, appearing weeks before you could even sow regular greens. That vivid lemon tang comes from oxalic acid concentrated in the young leaves, and it turns a simple soup or omelet into something restaurant-worthy. The French have built an entire culinary tradition around it. Give sorrel a 10-inch deep pot, partial sun, and consistent moisture. Harvest outer leaves and the crown keeps producing. Cut it back hard in midsummer, and it responds with a fresh flush of tender growth for fall. Perennial vegetable guides list garden sorrel as hardy through Zone 3, meaning there is almost nowhere in the country where it won't come back on a balcony year after year for up to a decade. Fun fact: classic French sorrel soup was historically eaten in spring as a medicinal tonic, an early source of vitamin C after months of winter root vegetables in the days before any fruit could survive shipping. Sitting at number 13 is quite possibly the strangest vegetable on this entire list. A plant that literally walks across your balcony and replants itself. The Egyptian walking onion. A normal onion gives you one harvest, one time, and dies. The walking onion refuses to play by those rules. Instead of flowers, it grows a cluster of small bulbs right at the top of its stalk in mid-air. As those top bulbs swell, their weight slowly bends the stalk down until the cluster touches the soil of a neighboring pot, where it roots and starts a brand new colony. The plant physically plants itself. For a balcony gardener, this is a self-expanding green onion machine. You harvest the tender green stalks all season like scallions, pull a few bottom bulbs when you need them, and let one or two stalks walk into an empty pot to keep the colony growing forever. A wide 12-inch container is perfect for a starter colony. Full sun, average soil, and essentially zero care. Walking onions are famously indestructible, shrugging off drought, frost, and neglect that would kill any normal allium. Growers' guides describe them as hardy from zone 3 to zone 9, one of the widest ranges of any perennial vegetable, and note that a single colony can persist for decades. Fun fact: despite the name, these onions have nothing to do with Egypt. The name likely stuck because their bizarre, exotic appearance reminded Victorian gardeners of something ancient and mysterious, and the marketing simply never wore off. For number 12, we have the workhorse that solves the single most expensive habit in your kitchen: garlic chives. Real garlic takes 9 months from planting to harvest, gives you one head, and it's over. Garlic chives deliver that same rich, garlicky flavor as a cut-and-come-again green continuously for 15 to 20 years from one planting. The plant builds a dense perennial clump of flat, strap-like leaves loaded with the same sulfur compounds that give garlic its bite. Slice the leaves into stir-fries, eggs, dumplings, salads, and 2 weeks later, the clump has completely regrown. In late summer, it sends up stunning white flower globes that pollinators mob, and those flower stalks are themselves a delicacy, sold in Asian markets at premium prices. An 8 to 10-inch pot in full sun is all it asks. Cut ruthlessly. The harder you harvest, the more tender the regrowth. In winter, the leaves die back, the roots sleep, and in spring, the whole engine restarts on its own. Horticultural references rate garlic chives as one of the longest-lived edible perennials for containers, with documented clumps still producing after 2 decades. Fun fact: in Chinese cuisine, garlic chives that are grown under cover, completely deprived of sunlight, turn pale yellow and ultra-tender, a delicacy called golden chives that costs several times the price of the green version. Just outside our top 10, at number 11, is a single plant that replaces an entire vegetable you buy every single week: lovage. Celery is one of the most demanding, most failure-prone crops a home gardener can attempt. It wants 4 months of perfect moisture and cool weather, and it still ends up stringy. Lovage gives you that exact celery flavor, but concentrated, richer, almost bouillon-like, from a carefree perennial that comes back for 20 years. The plant emerges in early spring and rockets to impressive size, producing hollow stalks and glossy leaves that taste like celery amplified.
A single leaf flavors an entire pot of soup. The hollow stems even work as edible drinking straws for a Bloody Mary, an old European party trick. Because lovage grows large, give it your biggest container, a 15-gallon pot or half barrel, and place it in the corner of the balcony where it can anchor the whole garden visually. Cut it back hard twice a season and it regrows tender. Perennial vegetable references rate lovage hardy to zone 3, and note that one mature plant supplies more celery flavor than a family can realistically use, which is why it was the standard soup herb of European kitchen gardens for centuries. Fun fact: in medieval Europe, lovage was considered a powerful love potion ingredient. Its very name comes from love ache, and it was tucked into bouquets and baths by hopeful romantics for hundreds of years. What did you think of those first 5? Do you already grow any perennials on your balcony, or is this whole idea new to you?
Let me know down in the comments below. Now let's dive straight into the top 10 of today's list. Let's keep it moving. At number 10 is the plant every gardening book warns you about, and the one plant where a balcony beats a backyard every single time. Mint. Ask anyone who planted mint in the ground and you'll hear a horror story. Underground runners spreading 10 feet in every direction, invading lawns, strangling flower beds. Mint is banned from garden beds for a reason. But here's the beautiful reversal. A container is a prison mint cannot escape. All of that aggressive, invasive energy, the trait that makes it a nightmare in the ground, gets redirected into one thing, producing an endless jungle of fragrant leaves inside your pot. The plant that terrorizes backyards becomes the single most productive herb on a balcony. One 10-inch pot yields continuous harvests for tea, mojitos, salads, and desserts from April to November.
Shear it to the soil twice a summer and it regrows within weeks, thicker each time. In winter, it dies back, sleeps, and returns for decades. The one rule: never let it share a pot with anything else. It will not share. Extension guides universally recommend containers as the only responsible way to grow mint, which means balcony gardeners aren't making a compromise here. They're using the superior method. Fun fact: in Greek mythology, Menthe was a river nymph transformed into the mint plant, which is why the Greeks rubbed banquet tables with mint leaves before feasts, a tradition that literally gave us the word mint. Moving down to number 9 is the second plant that's actually safer on a balcony than in any garden: horseradish. Horseradish in the ground is a life sentence. Every broken fragment of root becomes a new plant, and gardeners spend decades trying to remove it. In a deep container, that same unstoppable vigor becomes pure production. Here's the biological magic. The pungent heat of horseradish doesn't exist in the intact root at all. It's created in the moment of grating, when cell walls rupture and two separate compounds collide, producing that sinus-clearing fire, which is exactly why fresh grated horseradish from your own pot makes the jarred version taste like wet paper. The reaction is happening seconds before it hits your plate. Plant one root cutting in a 15-gallon fabric grow bag in spring. All summer, its dramatic, tropical-looking leaves decorate the balcony. In late fall, after frost sweetens and sharpens the root, Tip the entire bag over and harvest. Save one finger-sized piece, replant it, and next year the cycle repeats, forever from a single purchase. Gardening references rate horseradish hardy to Zone 3 and openly describe container growing as the preferred method, precisely because it makes the harvest effortless and the spread impossible.
Fun fact, horseradish is a member of the mustard family, and during the Delphic oracles era, the Greeks claimed the root was worth its weight in gold. It appears in records of offerings made to the god Apollo. At number 8 is a crop that produces more food per square foot of balcony than almost anything on Earth. The Jerusalem Artichoke, also known as the sunchoke. Most people have never grown it, and many have never even eaten it. Yet from a single grow bag, this plant delivers 5 to 10 pounds of crisp, nutty tubers every single year from one planting. Above the soil, it's a stunning 8-foot sunflower, a living privacy screen for your balcony all summer. Below the soil, the plant spends the season converting all that solar energy into a dense cluster of knobby tubers that taste like a cross between potato, water chestnut, and artichoke heart. After frost kills the tops, you tip the bag over and collect the harvest like buried treasure. Miss a few tubers?
Perfect. Those are next year's crop, already planted. Use the biggest fabric bag you can fit, 15 to 20 gallons, in your sunniest corner, and stake the stems against wind. That's the entire instruction manual. Nutrition references highlight that sunchokes store their energy as inulin rather than starch, a prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria and barely moves blood sugar, making them a favorite for diabetic-friendly cooking. Fun fact, Jerusalem artichokes have nothing to do with Jerusalem. They're native to North America, cultivated by Native Americans for centuries. The name is a mangling of girasole, the Italian word for sunflower, twisted by English speakers into Jerusalem. Claiming the number 7 spot is the queen of the permanent garden, a plant so long-lived it gets passed down in wills. Rhubarb. There are rhubarb crowns in this country still producing after 50 years, planted by grandparents, harvested by grandchildren.
That is the level of commitment this plant makes to you in exchange for a single afternoon of planting. Rhubarb's engine is a massive, energy-dense root crown that treats winter cold not as a threat, but as a requirement. It genuinely needs a proper chilling period to produce those thick crimson stalks. This is why northern balconies, the ones that struggle with heat-loving crops, grow the best rhubarb in the world. Your cold winter is the feature, not the bug. It demands a serious container, 20 gallons minimum, a half barrel is ideal, with rich soil and annual top-ups of compost. The rule of restraint: harvest nothing in year 1, lightly in year 2, and from year 3 onward, pull stalks freely from spring to midsummer. And remember, the stalks are the prize, but the leaves are toxic, so they go in the trash, never the salad. Extension guides confirm rhubarb thrives in zones 3 through 8, and note that a single established crown yields enough for a family's pies, jams, and crumbles indefinitely. Fun fact, in the 1700s, rhubarb root, prized in Europe as medicine, was literally more expensive than opium, and Russia held a state monopoly on the rhubarb trade, so valuable it was guarded like a national secret. At number 6, we have a lost vegetable that fed Europe for 1,000 years and then simply vanished from our menus: Good King Henry.
Before spinach conquered the world, this humble perennial was the green that monasteries and cottage gardens relied on. And it offers a deal spinach never could. Plant it once and harvest 3 different vegetables from the same pot every year for 20 years. In earliest spring, the thick young shoots are cut and cooked like asparagus. Weeks later, the arrow-shaped leaves come in as a spinach substitute that never bolts in heat, because a perennial has no panic flowering instinct to trigger. By summer, the flower buds themselves are edible, tossed in butter like tiny broccoli. It asks for almost nothing: a 10 to 12-inch pot, partial shade. Yes, this is a crop for the shady balcony where nothing else thrives, and steady moisture. It positively refuses to die, tolerating frost, neglect, and poor soil. Historical garden references describe good King Henry as a staple of medieval kitchen gardens across England and Germany, grown continuously for centuries before industrial agriculture pushed it aside for crops that ship better. Fun fact: the name has nothing to do with any English king. It comes from German folklore, where Good Henry was a helpful household elf, distinguishing this friendly plant from Bad Henry, its poisonous look-alike. Are you impressed by these vegetables? Which one would you actually plant on your balcony? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's head into the top 5 of our list, and make sure you stick around for the final vegetable. It is absolutely going to surprise you. Let's step into number 5. Entering our top 5 is the crop that turns a balcony rail into a dessert bar every single June: strawberries. Most people treat strawberries as a grocery item, never realizing they're one of the easiest perennials in existence, and that store berries, picked rock hard for shipping, are a completely different food from a berry ripened to deep red on the plant. The sugar development in the final 48 hours on the stem is something no supermarket can sell you. The strawberry's perennial engine is the crown, a compact powerhouse that survives freezing solid in a pot, then relaunches every spring. Even better, each plant sends out runners, baby clones on umbilical stems. Pin a runner into a neighboring pot, wait 3 weeks, snip the cord, and you've manufactured a free plant. A single hanging basket becomes an expanding empire. Choose ever-bearing or day-neutral varieties for waves of fruit from June to October instead of one big flush. Hanging baskets and rail planters are ideal. The fruit dangles in the air, away from soil rot and crawling pests. In deep winter, cluster the pots against the wall for protection. Extension guides confirm container strawberries produce well for 3 to 4 years per crown. And with free runner propagation, your colony simply never ages. Fun fact: the strawberry isn't technically a berry at all, and its seeds are on the outside, roughly 200 of them per fruit, making it the only fruit on Earth that wears its seeds on its skin. For number 4, we have the most dramatic plant that will ever stand on your balcony: the Globe Artichoke. An artichoke plant looks like it escaped from Jurassic Park. 4 feet of silver, deeply cut architectural leaves crowned with massive buds. Neighbors will stop and ask what it is. And each of those buds, the artichokes themselves, sells for $3 or $4 at the store, while a single established plant throws a dozen or more every summer. Here's the container advantage almost nobody knows. In cold climates, artichokes die in the ground. Their crowns can't survive deep frost,
so northern gardeners are told to treat them as annuals. But a pot is mobile. Wheel your artichoke into a garage or stairwell for the winter. Let it sleep cold but not frozen. Bring it out in spring, and you've turned an impossible perennial into a permanent resident, producing for 5 or 6 years. Give it a 20-gallon container, your sunniest spot, rich soil, and generous feeding. This is a hungry aristocrat. Harvest the buds while they're still tight before the scales open. Horticultural references note that overwintered second-year artichoke plants dramatically outproduce first-year plantings, the exact advantage the container method unlocks. Fun fact: in 1948, a young actress named Norma Jean was crowned California's very first artichoke queen in Castroville. The world would soon know her as Marilyn Monroe. Claiming the bronze medal at number 3 is a tropical treasure that costs a fortune at the store and grows almost by itself in a pot: ginger. Fresh ginger root runs $4 to $5 a pound, and the tender, thin-skinned, young ginger, chef's prize, barely exists in American stores at any price. Yet ginger is one of the laziest crops imaginable. It's grown not from seed, but from the exact root you buy at the grocery store. Here is the balcony superpower again. Ginger is a true perennial that simply cannot survive an American winter outdoors. In the ground, it's impossible north of Florida. But in a pot, it's effortless. It spends the warm months on your balcony, multiplying its rhizomes under the soil like a printing press. Before frost, you harvest what you need, then bring the pot inside to a warm corner where it idles through winter as a houseplant. Come spring, it goes back outside, bigger every year. Use a wide, shallow container. The rhizomes spread sideways, with rich, moist soil in bright shade. Ginger scorches in harsh, direct sun. Plant a plump, store-bought piece with visible buds an inch deep and be patient. Shoots take a few weeks. Nutritional references credit ginger's compound gingerol with well-documented anti-nausea and anti-inflammatory effects. This is a crop that's simultaneously a spice cabinet and a medicine chest. Fun fact: ginger was so valuable in medieval Europe that a single pound could be traded for a live sheep, and the ports of Venice built fortunes moving it west. Our runner-up at number 2 is the vegetable that every gardening book on earth tells you cannot be grown in a pot: asparagus. The objection is always the same. Asparagus needs deep soil, permanent beds, and years of patience. Strictly a crop for people with land. And that's precisely the myth we're breaking today. Asparagus is a crown of thick storage roots that produces spears every spring for 20 to 30 years, the longest-lived vegetable in the Western garden. What it actually needs isn't land, it's depth, stability, and patience. A half barrel or a 25-gallon fabric bag delivers the first 2. The third is up to you. Plant 2 or 3 one-year-old crowns 8 inches deep in your largest container. Year 1, harvest nothing. Let every spear become tall, ferny growth that recharges the roots. Year 2, take a light 2-week harvest. From year 3 on, your balcony produces gourmet spears for a full month every spring. Spears you snap and cook within the hour at a sweetness store asparagus loses within a day of cutting. The ferns themselves are a bonus. 5 feet of soft, feathery green that makes a stunning summer screen. Extension guides rate asparagus hardy to Zone 3, and container growers report crowns producing well past a decade with annual compost feeding. Fun fact: Louis XIV was so obsessed with asparagus that he ordered special greenhouses built at Versailles so he could eat it in December, earning it the nickname the food of kings. And taking the absolute crown at number 1, a vegetable that shatters the most basic rule you know and the biggest surprise of this entire list. A kale plant that lives for 20 years and grows taller than you. Tree collards. Everyone knows kale and collards as annuals. Sow, harvest, dead by winter, repeat forever.
Tree collards looked at that life cycle and simply opted out. This rare perennial brassica almost never flowers, and a plant that doesn't flower doesn't die. Instead, it just keeps growing, year after year, thickening into a woody trunk, reaching 6, 8, even 10 feet, producing sweet blue-green leaves the entire time. One plant in a 15-gallon pot replaces an entire bed of annual kale, permanently. You harvest leaves every single week all year long because tree collards don't stop for winter in most climates. Light frost only makes the leaves sweeter, converting starches to sugar like fine wine aging. In truly brutal winters, the container advantage appears again. Wheel it against the house wall or into a stairwell during the worst weeks. And because it rarely flowers, it rarely makes seed. Tree collards are passed gardener to gardener as cuttings, like a family heirloom. Stick a pencil-thick cutting in moist soil, and in a month, you have a new 20-year plant. Growers' references trace purple tree collards through generations of family gardens, where single plants have been documented producing for well over a decade, often outliving the fences they were planted beside. Fun fact: purple tree collards were preserved for generations largely by African American gardening communities in California, passed hand to hand as cuttings, a living heirloom that survived almost entirely outside the commercial seed industry. Before we wrap up, we need to address the one mistake that kills more container perennials than every pest and disease combined. And it happens in winter, while you're not even watching. Here's the trap. A perennial in the ground sleeps under a thick blanket of earth that never freezes solid. But a pot is exposed on all 6 sides. The root ball can freeze into a solid block of ice and thaw and freeze again, shredding the roots. A perennial that survives 40 below in the ground can die at 20 degrees in a lonely pot in the middle of a balcony. The fix takes 10 minutes and costs nothing. The huddle technique. In late fall, push every container together into one tight cluster against the most protected wall of your balcony. The building itself radiates warmth all winter. Wrap the outside of the cluster with burlap, bubble wrap, or even an old blanket, and mulch the soil surface with a few inches of straw or leaves. The pots in the middle protect each other like penguins in a blizzard. Do this one thing every November, and your perennials will greet you every single spring for decades. The real secret of the perennial balcony isn't any single plant on this list. It's a complete change in what gardening means. You stop being someone who starts over from zero every spring and become someone whose garden compounds like interest year after year. Older plants, deeper roots, bigger harvests, less work every season. Plant even one of these 15 this year, and next spring
When your neighbors are standing in line at the garden center with their seed packets, your balcony will already be growing. If this deep dive changed how you think about your balcony, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like. And I want to hear from you. Which of these perennials are you planting first? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see exactly which vegetables you can still plant this August for a harvest before winter, click the video on your screen right now. See you there.